Why is it that when markets crash, businesses fail, or fortunes take a hit, some families panic, while others stay eerily calm? Why do some people unravel emotionally the moment they lose money, status, or security, while wealthy families seem almost untouched by loss? And why does your financial education never explain the one rule that decides who collapses under loss and who stays in control? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Loss doesn't break people. Their relationship with loss does. And wealthy families are trained into a very different relationship with loss than everyone else. That difference starts with a single rule. Loss is information, not identity. Most people don't realize how deeply this rule reshapes behavior, emotion, and decision-making over an entire lifetime. Because if loss feels personal, it destabilizes you. But if loss feels informational, it sharpens you. And wealthy families are trained to see loss as information from the very beginning. Why loss feels devastating to most people? Let's start where the problem actually begins. Loss hurts because most people attach meaning to it. You don't just lose money. You lose confidence, you lose status, you lose self-image. You don't just lose an investment. You lose a story about who you thought you were. That's why loss feels humiliating, destabilizing, even terrifying. You don't feel poorer. You feel exposed. Now ask yourself something honestly. Why does your heart race when you check a falling balance? Why does a financial setback feel like a judgment? Why does loss feel like failure? Because you were trained to merge money with identity. And once identity is involved, emotion takes over. Wealthy families train the opposite. They separate identity from outcomes early. You are not your balance sheet. You are not your latest result. You are not your last decision. Results change. Identity stays stable. That stability is what creates calm during loss. The rule explained clearly. Here is the rule wealthy families live by, whether they say it out loud or not. Loss does not change who you are. It only changes what you know. That sentence alone explains decades of behavioral difference. Most people treat loss as a verdict. Wealthy families treat loss as data. A verdict demands emotion. Data demands analysis. One collapses you. The other improves you. This is why wealthy families don't panic when they lose money. Panic is an emotional response to a perceived threat to identity. If identity is protected, a panic disappears. Why your CPA never explains. Ask yourself a blunt question. Why does your CPA never talk about emotional resilience during loss? Because they aren't paid to. They are paid to track numbers, not retrain behavior. But behavior is where loss becomes catastrophic or manageable. Two people can lose the same amount of money. One spirals, the other recalibrates. Same loss, different rule. Wealthy families understand that emotional reaction is the most expensive cost of loss. The money lost is often recoverable. The emotional damage is what destroys future judgment. That's why they train emotional discipline before wealth, not after. How wealthy families teach this rule. Early, this rule is not taught through lectures. It's installed through experience. Wealthy children are allowed to lose early, small, and often. Lose games, lose bets, lose arguments, lose opportunities. But here's the key difference. Loss is never dramatized. No panic, no shame, no overreaction. Loss is discussed calmly. What happened? Why did it happen? What changed? Children learn that loss is not a crisis. It's a signal. And signals are useful. Why calm beats confidence? During loss, most people think confidence is what helps during loss. It's not. Confidence collapses when reality contradicts it. Calm survives. Wealthy families don't train confidence first. They train emotional neutrality. Neutrality allows assessment. Assessment allows recovery. Confidence without calm becomes denial. Calm without confidence becomes clarity. Clarity wins. The emotional cost of reacting to loss. When most people lose, they react. They explain. They justify. And they blame. They rush to recover emotionally. This reaction compounds the damage. Bad decisions follow emotional ones. Wealthy families do the opposite. They slow down. They delay action. They reduce communication. They minimize exposure. Why? Because reacting locks you into the emotional frame of loss. Waiting reframes it as information. Time is not just healing. Time is leverage. Why wealthy families stay quiet after loss? Notice something subtle. After major losses, wealthy families often go silent. No announcements, no explanations, no emotional storytelling. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is control. Talking too soon after loss reveals fear. Fear invites pressure. Pressure creates forced decisions. Wealthy families refuse to give loss that power. Loss as a filter, yet not a punishment. Here's a perspective wealthy families internalize early. Loss is not punishment. Loss is filtration. It removes weak strategies, weak partnerships, weak assumptions. If loss removes something fragile, that thing was a liability. This mindset eliminates resentment. Resentment keeps people emotionally stuck to loss. Wealthy families don't stay emotionally attached to what failed. They move forward lighter. Why poor and middle-class families? Panic during loss usually comes from one belief. This shouldn't be happening to me. That belief is fatal. Wealthy families don't expect immunity from loss. They expect variance. They expect cycles. They expect drawdowns. So loss doesn't shock them. It confirms what they already know about reality. The rule in business. In business, see, wealthy families do not frame losses as embarrassment. They frame them as tuition. Tuition is expected. Embarrassment is optional. This is why they can shut down failing ventures quickly. No ego, no attachment, no revenge, just numbers and next steps. The rule in investing. In investing, wealthy families expect losses. They build portfolios assuming error. Most people invest assuming success. That difference alone determines survival. If loss surprises you, you overreact. If loss is expected, you respond calmly. Wealthy families price emotional resilience into their strategy. The rule in relationships and status loss is not only financial. Status loss, reputation loss, opportunity loss. Most people crumble when status drops. Wealthy families don't anchor identity to external position. They know positions rotate. Identity does not. That's why they recover influence faster. Why this rule feels cold. But isn't outsiders often think wealthy families are cold during loss? Detached, unemotional, uncaring. That's not true. They feel loss. They just don't obey it. Feeling without reacting is discipline. Discipline preserves optionality. Optionality creates recovery. Rebuilding. This rule as an adult. If you were raised to treat loss as failure, you can retrain yourself. But it requires changing one habit. Stop asking, "What does this say about me?" Start asking, "What does this show me?" That single shift moves loss from identity to information. And information is always useful. The calm that comes from this rule. Once loss stops threatening identity, fear fades. Once fear fades, thinking returns. Once thinking returns, a recovery accelerates. This is why wealthy families appear calm during loss. They are not braver. They are not luckier. They are trained. The final truth. The rule rich families follow that keeps them calm during loss is simple but brutal. Nothing external is allowed to define who we are. Loss can change position. It cannot touch identity. And when identity is stable, loss becomes manageable. That rule is never taught in school. It's never explained by advisors. But it decides who survives volatility and who doesn't. Once you adopt it, loss loses its power over you. And when loss loses power, wealth becomes inevitable.